Hey everybody, this is TotalGamerJunkie. I want to welcome you all back to my channel. So in this video, I want to go over 5 things I 100% believe that the Life is Strange comic series will never answer. Now we have 2 issues left before the series ends, so maybe what I'm saying will get answered, like not all of it, but maybe 1 or 2 of these things on the video that I'm listing off, but I highly doubt it. But anyways, without further ado, let's get started. So up first, and this is actually difficult to place as number 1, it almost tied with the second one, but I believe this one is a bit more confusing, and that is, what happened to the other Max in other Chloe and Rachel's timeline? Now at the end of issue 4, well, towards the end of issue 4, in order to save her life, Max has to leave her timeline and go to a timeline that she believes is for her. Because up until this point, Max has been tearing apart between timelines, and she feels that she's gonna be wiped from existence. You know, each timeline is just pulling her apart until maybe there's nothing left. Like, I don't know how time rips a person apart. Like, I'm not that skilled with it. But essentially, to save her life, Max has to go to another timeline, or a universe, you know, like, they keep calling it, like, different things, it's hard to keep up. But anyways, so Max goes to a new timeline. At the end of issue 4, we see Max on a beach with an alternate version of Chloe and Rachel. Now in this new timeline, the events from the games are canon, and I personally believe, I've made a video about this like a year or 2 ago, I personally believe, the way Rachel hinted it in one of the issues, I forget which, that Chloe told her the truth at the end of episode 3 of Before the Storm, and so Rachel and her dad and her stepmom, their relationship gets torn apart and it breaks the family. But anyways, we're not here to talk about that, we're here to talk about Max. I'm just letting you know, the timeline's basically the same, except Max doesn't get into contact with Chloe afterwards. Like, once Chloe's dad dies, Max goes to Seattle with her parents, they lose contact. And then Max shows up on the beach 6 years later instead of 5, which is, she returns 5 years later in the game, but with the comic having it be a year after the storm, it makes it 6 years now. So Max returns, Chloe's ecstatic, but it's never implied what happened to other Max. Now, the thing that's weird is, when Max goes to this new timeline, she has a completely new set of clothes. And if you've seen the latest issue, which, spoiler alert, Max ends up returning to her timeline. She still ends up wearing her exact same clothes. So that to me could either be a mistake on one of the writers or the artist's part, or, you know, time travel's a bitch and a half to explain, really. There's different versions of it across multiple forms of media, so I don't know. But I've made a theory that Max has transferred her consciousness into another Max's, because we see this happen in the first arc. Max ends up putting her consciousness inside another Max, and that Max is with Warren. And what happened was, at the diner, getting tongue-tied. At the diner, you know, when Max uses the photo to travel back in time to warn Chloe about Jefferson, her powers don't work for some reason. So I'm thinking that that actually would make sense. Like, the way I see it, Max's body is being torn apart, and so the reason she's naked in the transect in issue 4 is because she has no body, she's just a consciousness. So this to me would explain, okay, she put her consciousness in another Max in another timeline, and so when Max goes back to her original timeline, she's taking her new body into this timeline. So that's why she has the same clothes in in the latest issue 20. That's it. Sorry, I was drawing a mind blank on that. So the second thing that will definitely 100% not be explained in the comics is what Chloe, Max's Chloe, in her original timeline, told everyone when Max disappeared. Now, Max has been gone for 2 years, and we know through the comics that even though Max is in a different timeline, time flows exactly the same. Now, Chloe ends up telling Pixie the truth, and both Pixies find out, but only Pixie in Max's original timeline, she's the only one that finds out what really happened to Max. Now, there is like a little tidbit that's mentioned about Max's disappearance, but I wouldn't say that's just, to be honest, it's not really good enough. Like, you're telling me that Max's parents are not going to get in contact with Max for 2 years? They're not going to wonder where she is, why she isn't calling? I'll tell you what, if I was a parent and I had a child that went missing and I couldn't get in contact with him or anything, I would go to my child's best friend and demand answers, because Chloe was staying with Max. But they were saying they weren't together, but they were living together in where was it? I forget. But basically, they were roommates. So I'm just surprised the comic hasn't addressed this. Maybe they can still do that in the remaining 2 issues. But other than that, no, we're definitely not going to get any answers. And it feels really, I don't know, like a missed out opportunity, because Max's parents, we don't really know much about them. We know more about Chloe's parents than we do Max's. So I think it's a missed opportunity that Emma didn't put that in the comic, like, and then, or maybe, you know, like maybe it's on the news. Maybe Max is a missing person. I don't know. Like, and we see Max's parents on the TV trying to find their daughter. Maybe there's a search going. Like, they could have done what they did with Rachel Amber in the game and had missing flyers for Max, implied that people are looking for her, but no, they didn't do that. So I just think it's a missed out opportunity. I know I keep repeating that, but I know it just kind of frustrates me a bit that was never explored. So the third thing I don't think the comics will ever answer is why Max and Pixie are able to see Tristan when he's invisible. Now, I do have my own personal theory on this, which I'd like to discuss, but I don't think the comics will answer that. So I think it has to do with alternate timelines. So when Max goes to the alternate timeline at the end of issue 4, she's able to see Tristan when he's invisible. And when Tristan goes to Max's timeline, his powers get screwed up and he becomes intangible. So he's not only invisible, he's also passing through stuff. Pixie is able to see him. But even though this is the original timeline, to Tristan, this is an alternate timeline. So what I'm thinking is, his power does not work against certain people against people with powers in an alternate timeline. So Max has powers, she goes to this alternate timeline, she's able to see Tristan. Tristan goes to Max's timeline, which is also an alternate timeline, and his power's on the fritz, and Pixie, who has the power to see across different realities apparently, is able to see Tristan. But then again, we've never seen Tristan disappear in front of Pixie in his original timeline. We've seen him do it to a few other people, such as Lawrence and I forget which member of the High Seas band it was. We see his power doesn't work. We see that Rachel and Chloe can't see him when he turns invisible. So maybe his power might not work on Pixie in his original timeline, but we've never seen that, so this is the best reason I've got as to why Max and Pixie are able to see through Tristan's power. So the fourth thing on my list is the purpose of the transect. Now, the whole point of the first arc of Life is Strange was Max was jumping between realities back and forth. She was being torn apart. So she had to stop fighting it and let herself go to the timeline she was supposed to go to. Then we find out in the later issues that she doesn't belong there. Max, we know that, but Max makes the realization, I don't belong here, I need to get home. She fights against the storm, and then she finally gets to her timeline. Well, obviously, you know, other stuff happens before that. In issue 12, I believe it is, Tristan and Max go to the transect, but it's all bloody and broken. And I've made a theory video about that. I theorized that maybe the storm entered the transect and screwed it all up. But later in issue 20 it was, we discover that Max and Tristan, they're able to combine their powers against the storm to go to the transect. Yet it's completely fine now. There's no damage at all. And Max and Tristan are wearing clothes, which is weird because in issue 4, when Max was in the transect, she didn't have any clothes. So what was the point of all that? It's so confusing. And to top it all off, when Max finally gets back to her timeline, she's wearing her original clothes. Whereas at the end of issue 4, Max is wearing completely different clothes. So this thing is definitely not going to get answered. We do have little bits of information about it, but we don't have a reliable answer as to what its purpose was other than to drive the plot forward. I mean, if you want to call it a plot, because the story goes all over the place. Now, the fifth and last thing I don't believe the comics will explain to us is what Chloe has been doing for the past 2 years since Max left their timeline. Now, I do think Chloe and Max have a lot of catching up to do, so I could be wrong here. Maybe they could explain to us in a panel or two what Chloe has been up to, because I can say 100% certainty. Chloe is taking Max to Seattle because Victoria told Chloe that she owns Chase Space, her parents' gallery, and she wants to offer Max a job. So I'm 100% certain that's a surprise Chloe has for Max. So maybe along the way, Chloe could tell Max what she's been up to since Max left their timeline. Now, will we know everything that Chloe's been up to? No, but I do think we might get. The issue might scratch the surface of what Chloe's been up to, but we're not going to get a full answer as they want to move the story forward. The comics these days, they just try to get to the point. They don't try to explain stuff. They just fast forward. That's why I don't really read a lot of modern comics these days. I prefer older ones because they focused on story, plot, had a nice pacing. But that's neither here or there. That's not what I'm going to talk about. So anyways, that's the end of this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think I might be wrong with any of these? Do you think I might be right? Let me know in the comments below. And I'm sorry for not uploading a video any sooner, just been real busy. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one, which will hopefully be soon. This is TotalGamerJunkie, signing off.